Okay, today is Saturday, January the 21st, 2023. It is 11 a.m. Arizona time, and this is our Desert Blockchain Camp, 27th Avenue in Georgia open house, which normally we have on the second Saturday of the month, but because of the holiday, we're having it on the third Saturday of the month. And so tune in on the second Saturday, and I'm checking the audio. So unfortunately, my camera is not working today, so I won't be on camera. We'll just be doing screen share throughout this session, and we should have some additional folks joining us. But normally we have part of the session is showing the folks that are attending here at Desert Blockchain Camp. So I apologize for that, but today we're going to cover a few topics. We're going to cover the recently introduced, or at least announced, E-hryvnia central bank digital currency that the Ukrainian government is introducing. And then we're going to go over our SNNAC, Stellar NFT NFC Access Control. And we're going to talk about just basically some general items after that. So Shane, welcome. So if you're not familiar with the Desert Blockchain Camp open houses, we have these, as I said, on the second, usually on the second Saturday of the month, and we invite basically anybody that would like to attend to join us here at the Desert Blockchain Camp on 27th Avenue in Georgia, and you can find the address, the specific address in the Google Maps link on the MEETUP.com site at Desert-Blockchain. And if you're not familiar with Desert Blockchain, we are a community in Arizona and beyond that basically has sessions both in person and virtually. And we're interested in basically use cases for blockchain versus the financial side of it, the what I call buy low, sell high. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody wants to buy low and sell high, but we're more interested in the general applications for decentralized technology, Web3, Web5, whatever you want to call it. And that's really what we focus on. So we are community supported, and we invite you to join us on Patreon and become a Desert Blockchain citizen. And that will entitle you to get a Zoom link to join us live during our sessions, both on the fourth Wednesday of the month, which is our monthly session, and then our open houses on the second Saturday of the month, and also Saturdays in between, where we have technical sessions primarily on the unannounced and invitation and Desert Blockchain citizens only sessions that are the rest of the Saturdays besides the open house, which is on the second Saturday. So that's a lot of information, and basically, feel free to reach out to me, Jay Carpenter at desertblockchain.com, if you have any questions or need any further explanation. And do follow us on Twitter. Twitter is at Desert Block Hack is the best way to really keep up on what's happening with our community. So, any questions, any comments from the folks that are here or online before I get started? looks really good, Shane. Thank you.
This will get us warm and toasty.
Nice. It's very cold here in our camp location, and Shane Sandler just brought in a heater. So we're grateful for that. So something occurred, and basically this last week that I want to emphasize, and I'm going to switch over to a presentation now, which was during the World Economic Forum. There was a presentation by the one of the deputy ministers of Ukrainian government, who's in charge of digital transformation, and he talked about how they are committed to basically transforming the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian society, ecosystem, and so forth, into a world-class, world-leading digital society and operation. But the underlying, and I'm hoping to play the a little bit of the actual news conference on this from the World Economic Summit, or a forum rather. But the underlying point that I got from this conference, or this session at the World Economic Forum, was the amount that the Ukrainian government, society, and military is relying upon blockchain technology, specifically, well, I guess I can't say totally specifically the Stellar network, but I'm guessing that a big part of their blockchain infrastructure is running on the Stellar network, since they have built their E-hryvnia digital currency on the Stellar network. So this is a presentation that I've put together, and if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to put comments in the chat. I'm watching the chat, and we will talk about that as things progress. So here's the topics. The question is blockchain Ukraine's competitive advantage? And I believe that it is, and I'll talk about that in this presentation. And then a little bit about the World Economic Forum session and the announcement of the E-hryvnia currency. And then how is this decentralized digital infrastructure performing under adversarial attack? And I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail, but what I'm encouraged about is that what's happening in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, and I don't want to, take either side of this. However, as tragic as the war is, what is happening is the decentralized digital constructs that we're going to be talking about are actually under adversarial attack in a multitude of ways. And I think what is interesting to learn about this is how it's performing under this adversarial attack. And then we'll talk a little bit about, what the competitive advantages are that seem to be happening in the Ukrainian application of these decentralized constructs. So here is the World Economic Forum session, and I'm going to play a little bit of that, about 7 minutes of it, and just to give you a feel of what was said and how this decentralized infrastructure is playing into the events happening in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. So, switching over to the press conference. And hopefully, once this loads, you'll be able to hear it. Okay, sorry, my computer is very slow. There's so much going on here. Okay. We're going to play for about 7 minutes until they get into the questions.
Thank you for joining us today, a conversation with Mikhail Fedorov. Mikhail. I had practiced and I apologize.
No problem.
Mikhail Fedorov, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. We're now entering the second year of war in Ukraine, and Deputy Prime Minister, amidst this crisis, you still had to deliver, public service to millions of Ukrainians. Could you share how you have accomplished this goal through innovation?
Всім доброго дня.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Дійсно, Україна зараз відбувається жахлива війна.
Indeed, a terrible war is going on in Ukraine now.
І Україна продовжує активно захищати свою свободу.
And Ukraine is defending its freedom.
Є окремий фронт, який зараз відбувається, це кіберфронт, інформаційний фронт.
There is a cyber front, information front, that is a separate one.
І в 2019 році ми створили в Україні Міністерство цифрової трансформації, завдання якого побудувати найзручнішу у світі державу.
In 2019, we set up the Ministry of Digital Transformation, the task of which was set to build the convenient digital state in the world.
І все, що ми побудували до повномасштабного вторгнення, зараз нам допомагає під час війни.
Everything we had built before the large-scale invasion has been helping us now during the large-scale war.
Починаючи від інтелектуальної розвідки,
Starting with the intelligent reconnaissance.
коли українці на тимчасово окупованих територіях можуть розповідати про пересування російської техніки.
Whereupon Ukrainians residing on the occupied territories can actually convey information about the movements of the enemy troops.
Закінчуючи швидкими соціальними виплатами або реєстрацією пошкодженого майна.
And ending with quick expedited social payments and compensation for the damaged property.
І незважаючи на щоденні кібератаки, ми кожного тижня запускаємо нові сервіси в Україні.
And despite daily cyber attacks, we launch new services in Ukraine despite those.
І в цьому році ми закінчимо цифровізацію найпопулярніших послуг в Україні.
This year we'll complete the digitalization of the most popular services in Ukraine.
І також це війна цифрова.
It's also a digital war.
І зараз роль безпілотних технологій, інтелектуальної розвідки є дуже важливою.
And the role of unmanned aerial vehicles and intellectual or intelligent reconnaissance is very important.
І це також окремий трек нашої роботи.
That's a separate track in our work.
Тому що зараз ми будуємо екосистему розвитку military-tech технологій в Україні.
Because we're now building out an ecosystem of developing military technologies in Ukraine.
І ми прийняли за цей час багато важливих рішень.
we've made many important decisions these days.
Починаючи від переносу ключових інформаційних систем в хмару,
Starting with moving key information systems into the cloud.
Продовжуючи тим, що ми навпаки збільшили темп цифровізації, а не уповільнили його.
Continuing with the fact that we have actually sped up, we accelerated, not decelerated the speed of our digital transformation and development.
І незважаючи на тимчасові блокаути або відключення електроенергії, ми активно використовуємо нові технології, як, наприклад, супутниковий інтернет, для того, щоб Україна була на зв'язку.
And despite the blackouts that result from the damage to the infrastructure, we actually intensifying the development using satellite technologies very extensively to make sure Ukraine is connected, is online.
Завдяки нашим воїнам, які сміливо зупиняють Російську Федерацію, у нас є час для того, щоб в цьому році зробити наступний такий еволюційний, навіть не еволюційний, а революційний технологічний стрибок.
Owing to our courageous soldiers who are courageously fighting and stopping the Russian Federation's invasion, we have an opportunity this year to make this next step, evolutionary or rather revolutionary step in this direction.
Да, і готові відповісти на ваші питання.
And I am ready to answer your questions.
So I definitely have my own question, but I'm going to open the floor to reporters. Before you state your question,
Okay, I'm going to stop it there and go back to the presentation. So I highly recommend you watch the rest of this. I just wanted to give people a taste, sort of a flavor of how important the digital aspect is of the Ukrainian conflict, as well as what's happening in terms of their overall embracing of their, as they call it, digital transformation. So about 17 minutes into this video, it is cited that they are using Stellar for their digital E-hryvnia currency. And this deputy minister of digital transformation talks about how he will be receiving his pay on using the digital hryvnia. So let's go to the next. This is a write-up on the E-hryvnia, and this is actually from, I believe, 2019, and they did an extensive amount of research on setting this up and an extensive amount of research on how Stellar would perform. And I recommend that you take a look at this. The links are in the presentation. But in particular, this is one of the reports that's I downloaded, and you can see highlighted the mention of Stellar, but they did a very thorough, in-depth analysis of Stellar for their digital E-hryvnia currency. And the interesting thing about this is they actually ran it as a private network and talk about the pros and cons of that, and also as a public network. So I was impressed with the amount of research that they did, and this particular write-up I think is very informative regarding running Stellar as a private network and then as a public network. So in addition, this announcement just came out a few days ago, how they have partnered with one of their main banks, Tascom Bank, which is one of the oldest banks in the Ukraine, to launched the E-hryvnia digital currency. And then TASCOM, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, but they did a research report as well. And you can see there's part of it includes commentary from the CEO and executive director of the Stellar Development Foundation, which is Donnell Dixon. And so I'd recommend you take a look at that as well. But this kind of harkens back to one of the elements that's fundamental to blockchain, and in particular the Bitcoin blockchain, which is the solving of, or the handling of what's called the Byzantine generals problem. And this is a long-standing network problem regarding communication and coordination. And the interesting thing about this, in my view, is that the whole blockchain ecosystem references this military problem of communication and coordination. And basically, it's how do you, in a decentralized fashion, assure that if you're going to attack in a decentralized way, which is basically surrounding a centralized opponent, how do you make sure that all of your battalions or your forces are going to be attacking at once? Because in this scenario, if the decentralized attack goes as planned, where the centralized opponent is attacked from all sides, then the decentralized wins. But if the decentralized communication breaks down, or there's a traitor in the mix and somebody decides to not attack from one of the sides, then the centralized opponent will win. And I think that is informative in a number of respects as we're looking at the strengths of decentralization versus centralization. So I think highlighting the Byzantine general problem, which is a fundamental issue that the Bitcoin blockchain solved through their proof of work and longest chain approach, is informative, and it highlights how I think blockchain is an important component in military or conflict scenarios. So this is a little write-up on, in a little more depth, about the Byzantine generals problem, which you can take a look at and read if you're interested. I'm going to jump to, and I pulled content from a session that I did in October on our monthly session that was titled Military Advantage in Blockchain. But I wanted to highlight that it's not only the Ukraine that is relying upon blockchain technology and has embraced blockchain technology, but several of the countries that are on the western border of Russia have been very early adopters of blockchain technology, specifically as a counter to what they consider to be a threat from Russia. And Estonia was one of the first countries to adopt blockchain technology. Actually, they claim before the Bitcoin white paper was published, and they have incorporated blockchain and decentralization deeply into their entire socio-political economic fabric. So, you know, here you can see that I believe they have built their own blockchain. And they're saying that it's even used by NATO and the US Department of Defense. So here's more about the Estonian blockchain technology approach and goes into depth. They have a website. Here's their website, where you can see that they have extensive information on how they're incorporating blockchain technology. Same with this page, and you can see this harkens back to actually 1991, when they were looking at how do they boost their resilience and so forth using cryptography, and as early as 2008, actually deploying blockchain technology. Here is a good short explanation video on how they're using public-private keys in their ecosystem. And then here's a in-depth study of the entire Estonia digital republic, as they call it, secured by blockchain. So you can see that it's very ingrained into the Estonian ecosystem. And here is a article from one of their leaders that specifically points to that they've spent 10 years building an open government, wants it to make it impossible to do bad things on the internet. And specifically, they cite that Estonia at least has spent so much time and energy on blockchain technology as a defense against a potential attack from what they consider to be adversaries, specifically Russia. This is a very interesting video that highlights, how Russia was perceived to be the superior cyber force, let's say, prior to the Ukrainian conflict starting. So prior to about a year ago in 2022, early 2022, most cyber experts would have guessed that Russia would have prevailed in a cyber attack. However, as this Wired magazine article and video points to, Russia has not been successful in crippling the Ukrainian digital infrastructure. So I think that's yet another telling point. And here again is another article with the headline, Ukraine's digital battle with Russia isn't going as expected. And most people are surprised at how resilient Ukraine has been in this digital battle. So this talks a little bit more about how the Ukrainian government has benefited from taking cryptocurrency donations and funding the war. And in the World Economic Forum video, if you watch the entire thing, which is about 30 minutes, the deputy minister of digital transformation talks about how they have actually paid for military supplies on the front lines instantly using cryptocurrency and so forth. So here is a article from I believe December 2021, and it's talking about how the Ukrainian government was experimenting with the Stellar network to test their digital currency. And then this is talking about how drones have become an integral part of the conflict in the Ukrainian-Russian situation. And again, the minister at the World Economic Forum talks about how drones are, a key piece to this conflict. And then this is from the Wall Street Journal about how cheap hobbyist drones are becoming a serious component to conflicts basically around the world, how the United States military is trying to combat the ability for pretty much anybody to launch drones in conflict situation. So let's see. This is drones in Estonia. I'm not going to go through that. This talks about the other states or countries along the western border of Russia, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Ukraine, and so forth, and how they have specifically deployed blockchain and decentralized technologies, distributed ledger technologies, as a key component to their defenses. This is about Latvia, this is Lithuania, and then this is talking about how Russia, at least, Vladimir Putin has resisted digital assets and payments. This is a really key talk that was given, I think, in 2016 by a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, Thomas E. Ricks. And it talks about how our military, the United States military, is focused on using defenses and military tactics that are basically from the prior conflicts and not really designed for the cyber and global foreign attacks that we're likely to face and that are surfacing in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. Here's another military leader talking about how we're behind the curve on blockchain. This was August 2022. And then this is another market analysis talking about the need for research and development investment in blockchain technology in the military and defense context. This is Darren Soto of Florida, and he specifically wrote a letter to Congress saying, hey, the United States is way behind on in the decentralized compared to the rest of the world in decentralization in the military context. Here's just kind of a map that I think is informative to show how some of the key countries along the western border of Russia have been embracing decentralization, blockchain technology, distributed ledger technology, and how it's clear that when you're talking about a threat model, a threat situation, these countries have freely chosen to bolster their defenses using blockchain technology. In a prior presentation, I did have Belarus as well in the blue, and I have since found out that Belarus is actually an ally of Moscow. So I apologize for that error. But in any case, here is a talk by Juan Benet, the founder of Protocol Labs and the Interplanetary File System. And Juan makes a point that security is a key consideration for everything they do. And that has shown up here under state level attacks by Turkey, where the government of Turkey took down the Turkish Wikipedia page, and the folks at Protocol Labs resurrected the content using IPFS, and to my knowledge, it withstood the state level, attacks by the Turkish government to take that down. Same thing with in the Spanish Catalonian conflict. IPFS resurrected content that the Catalonian faction wanted to basically distribute and make available to people, and the Spanish government did not want that up, but it apparently withstood attacks by efforts to take the content down by adding it using IPFS. IPFS, the interplanetary file system, was able to withstand whatever efforts were launched to remove the content. And IPFS is a decentralized construct. So same thing with China, and all of that, I think, speaks to the power of decentralization. This is an article about how the Ukraine is relying upon internet connectivity using Starlink, which is the Elon Musk's initiative for satellite services in space in a different fashion than what has been geosynchronous satellite internet services. This is one of my favorite videos by Milton Friedman, where he talks about the power of market forces as a faction in peace. And I've heard that echoed in two different contexts recently, one with the Thunderbird, the Arizona State University's Thunderbird School of Global Management, and also in the International Dispute Resolution, International Chamber of Commerce. Both of those entities were started from the view of free markets are a fundamental factor in encouraging peace. So here's a TED Talk on the same theme. When goods do not cross borders, armies do. And the reverse of that is when goods cross borders, armies do not. So here's a little bit about Stellar. And then just a quote from Sun Tzu, Art of War. Supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And in my view, I think free markets are good at achieving that intention. This is the session that I did in October on military advantage. A lot of it's overlapping with this, but and yeah, there's a presentation, a little bit about me and my contact information. But one thing I would like to say about, the decentralized conflicts and so forth is that, let me get to this. So hearkening back to this, we hear a lot of buzzwords or terms like artificial intelligence, all sorts of terms. Let's just look at artificial intelligence versus blockchain. And part of the reason that I put together these two presentations, one focused on the Ukraine and the E-hryvnia currency, and then the military advantage in blockchain, is that I get a assurance and a higher degree of confidence in blockchain and decentralized constructs because I see them being tested, basically battle tested, and withstanding those battle tests. And I think that's the strongest test that you can place on any kind of technology or approach. Whereas in real life, what I'm seeing around artificial intelligence is a failure, and particularly in Carvana and Open Door now, where they have deployed artificial intelligence in their operations. And what happened was they ended up overbidding for automobiles, and in Open Door's example, for houses, with rather disastrous results. So, and you know, clearly artificial intelligence has value and promise, and you know, has a lot of use cases. But I think it's important to look at, you know, what happens in real life in whatever technology you're talking about, whether it's decentralized blockchain or artificial intelligence. Does it really stand up when it's deployed in the wild? So that's about all I have for this this particular segment. I'm looking for any comments that there might be among the folks that are watching on YouTube. Please feel free to put those comments in the chat, and yeah, we'll go from there. Tom, any comments from you?
No comments.
Okay, and no comments in. Okay, okay, go ahead.
Drew a lot down.
Randy's gonna.
Let me comment on the last subject you brought there, Carvana and Open Door. Do you have any feel for what percentage of volume that Carvana had in purchase of vehicles in that market? Is there any sense of, because that would potentially, like if you have a feedback loop and you're providing the majority of the data,
Yeah.
that feeds back to you, you're potentially being the largest player in, and I'm not saying they were, I'm just curious about,
Well,
was that a factor?
so I am not an expert on what Carvana was doing or the used car market or anything else. I was struck, what, about 6 months ago, maybe 12 months ago, by this anomaly that used car prices seem to be almost inverted with new car prices. It just didn't seem right. You know, in retrospect, I would say it would be a great research project to drill down into the question you're asking. How big of an influence was Carvana in influencing the price of used cars? Because if in fact they had distorted the curve for used car prices, then, and you're right, and they're getting basically an echo chamber feedback loop, that's yet another
Well, I would push back a little bit.
failure.
For example, I would push back a little bit on, okay, we kind of lost my.
So I don't know.
No, I know,
The point is that, and I can't totally pin, you know, Carvana's problems on their reliance on artificial intelligence.
Okay.
I'm just saying that from what I know about their operations, they heavily relied upon artificial intelligence as part of their automation and scaling and so forth. Does that make
So,
sense?
yes, I want to respond to your comment about the market itself. I think part of the reason why the used car market inflated so quickly is because those are readily available, deliverable. I can go buy a used car and pay cash and drive it off. The brand new vehicle, new off the lot market actually froze up because of a lot of the supply chain issues.
Mhm.
So I think that might have had an impact
Yeah.
on the reverse, the reverse
That's a good point.
flip. Now, the second there, I think the real estate market actually was a bigger issue because 72 sold, Zillow itself, Open Door, there were like multiple players potentially providing that feedback, bidding up. There were hedge funds, there's large international banking conglomerates that were pooling funds to buy blocks of
Mhm.
real estate as a market, projection. And so I think there were multiple sources of feedback and artificial intelligence data points that were just bidding up properties. And
Mhm.
it was a frenzy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't know, and I'm not sure you could pinpoint it on flaws in artificial intelligence. I'm just saying, I think that would be an interesting place to look because,
But what I'm suggesting though is Zillow itself is an artificial intelligence machine. It's a data point that's real time, or at least some lag, very short lag, because they're posting the prices of the sales that are happening. And as the prices go up and you get that loop of just continuous pricing going up, that's feeding the market itself, and you got more players that want to participate because they see the market.
yeah.
And I personally don't believe most markets are efficient because there usually is a group of people that know more than the majority of the people participating.
Well, I can't say for sure. I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence or the housing market or the used car market. All I'm saying is that in the real world, here you've got Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and the Ukraine against a pretty staunch adversary, Russia. They have deployed decentralized digital constructs designed to be defenses against cyber attacks. And the indication, at least in my mind, is that has stood up under real life attacks.
So,
But you've got two examples, or at least I'm citing two examples of in a let's say a market situation. I don't know if you call that adversarial, but you're definitely in a competitive situation. Open Door and Carvana both seemingly having big problems.
well, the couple of the Zillow and 72 sold, they're having problems too.
Yes.
They overbought prices.
Yeah, same thing.
So let's go back to blockchain. Unless anybody else wants to participate in that conversation.
Yeah, I don't see any comments in the chat. There are people watching, but go ahead.
So
And then we're going to wrap it up because we don't have, I don't have video on, so we're not going to be able to show the SNNAC live, but go ahead.
So I do want to talk about your major thing, blockchain, of this discussion. So I see two different, at least two, maybe more, but two primary camps. One is currency. And obviously you suggested Bitcoin has solved that general problem of currency being established as a store of value and impenetrable because of the proof of work network that's behind it. Data itself, non-currency data, websites, communications, in the decentralized format, I agree. Whether it's public or private, you could use both sides and say public. Wikipedia being an example, I agree. If you can provide more broadcasters, as an example, IPFS, of the data itself, you're going to eliminate the ability for denial of service attack directly on one central point, and that's going to provide with that value.
You can grab, you can grab some of the tables. I'm sorry.
I guess my main point is, I think there's, in your discussion, I think currency, trading of value, and data and information and communications are two separate things. So I just want to make that clear, is that I think blockchain is very functional from a currency perspective because it has one specific purpose: securing the transaction in a public forum thing. And you could make a case for private form too. The data set, it's not always clear that blockchain is the best form, but decentralized sources of sharing of information, whether it's blockchain or not, are still definitely the example I think is being shown here. Now, how they use blockchain, I'm not sure. I didn't read any of these articles or watch videos.
Yeah, and I don't think you can, at this point, you can fully assess how these countries are using blockchain technology because they're in the middle of the conflict still.
I was just kind of pushing back that blockchain is kind of a very generic term, and it has a purpose, and I'm all for them using that, but it's still kind of a little bit glossed over to me on a lot of this.
Yeah, none of this should be taken as, absolute truth. You should take all these comments with a high degree of skepticism, but I'm just pointing in some general directions that at least give me some higher level of confidence in the decentralized constructs, and in particularly Stellar, because of the federated Byzantine agreement approach. I'm encouraged by that. So anyway, that's about all I have for today. We were going to talk about the SNNAC project, but I'm going to end the live stream and wrap it up here because of my camera issues, my video issues. So I'll leave the Zoom open so that our participant that's dialed in can still participate, but I am going to turn off the YouTube and so anyway, thanks for joining. We will have a session on the 4th Wednesday of this month. That'll be our monthly session at 7 p.m. I don't have a topic just yet, but stay tuned. And again, follow us on Twitter for the best source of updates and so forth. But thank you for your participation. I will stop the screen share and stop the recording.